shows in the research and polling report that patients are waiting days, if not weeks, in order to obtain their medication. While I'm going to touch on the plant count limit, the plant count limit that is proposed includes the plant material that would be needed in order to manufacture edibles to meet the current patient demand. And the 1750 just is not realistic when it takes substantially more plant material in order to create an edible. I would propose that the department create another section for the sole purpose of a plant count in addition to the 1750 for the producers to grow for the purpose solely of manufacturing edibles and goods for the marketplace. This will relieve the issue of the needed plant material, which is almost 2 times to 3 times as much in order to make the medicine as potent as it has to be than it does for individuals to use flowering buds or things of that nature to satisfy the medical need. The other area that I want to touch base on, and it was mentioned earlier, is my concern of PPLs. And the rule does not distinguish or state anywhere in the rule that PPLs are required to report the amount of grow or the yield of their medicine per quarter as licensed producers are required to do. It also doesn't enforce any of the requirements of quality assurance as it does for licensed producers. And under the new rule, the proposal is that PPL has the ability to gift or provide another qualified patient in the program cannabis. However, what the rule fails to do is provide protections for the public
Mr.
health.
Jacobs, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Doesn't provide protections for the public health of those PPLs who are distributing medicine to other qualified patients, as it does with the licensed producers. So my concern is from a public health standpoint is that there's going to be plant material that may be introduced into the marketplace that has not been tested, that has not there's no quality assurance, there's no reporting requirements. And finally, the PPLs are not restricted by rule from also purchasing up to the maximum allowed of cannabis through a dispensary each and every 90 days. And for that reason, it seems that there's a disparity between a qualified patient who may not be able to afford the startup cost for a PPL and those who do have the benefit of a PPL. So I think there's a disparity between those who have the ability and those who do not, and it would be good governance of the department to rectify those contradictions in the rule. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt Green.
Can I go a little bit later? I'll work my way up to the front.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
And I apologize, I'm having a struggle with reading this last name. I believe it might be, first initial is S, might be Costner. Maybe I just left to Kevin Costner maybe last night. If you are, believe that you are on the list very early and signed in, and I did not call your name, please check the list. That may be you. The next person, David Belcher.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm with Pecos Valley Production, and on behalf of Pecos Valley Production BEP, we want to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to comment on the proposed amendments to the Department's medical cannabis program rules. First off, we believe that there's a common goal amongst all LNPPs and the state to provide safe and cost-effective medicine to our patients. We appreciate the efforts of the Department of Health to develop and enforce the rules of the medical cannabis program believe the regulation is an important part of keeping the program safe and fair for all. And we agree with a significant portion of the proposed rule changes. That being said, we would like to express concern about several of the modifications to the rules that will not lead to more cost-effective cannabis production for our patients. We provided more detail regarding our concerns in written comments, and at this point, just wanted to highlight what we think are a couple of the biggest potential negative impacts on consumer pricing. First up is the rule modification, the proposed new plant limit of 1,715 flowering plants combined with the non-mature plants less than 8 inches. As several people have indicated this morning, the way this rule modification is written with non-mature plants less than 8 inches, that's going to effectively reduce the supply of cannabis compared to our current production rate. It's not clear if that was the intention of DOH, was to reduce the supply, but that's what's going to result from this modification. And we all know what the reduction in supply is going to do for pricing. To remedy that, and allow more cost-effective production, we're recommending the Department of Health remove the 8-inch height restriction for non-mature plants, or better yet, even increase the total plant count in accordance with the number of patients that an lnpp serves and their consumption needs. On the rule to allow producers to request an increase in plant count, we request DOH to consider that to go in immediately and not wait until June of 2021. So if there's a need for producers to produce more for their patients, please allow us to do so sooner rather than later. I think next up would be for Department of Health to reconsider the new license fee schedule. A fee of $180,000 to maintain that plant count limit of 1,750 plants, that's an extremely large amount of money for a small nonprofit business to pay. We have to plan that amount out 12 months in advance in order to make that payment. It's a huge burden on us. And the way that proposed structure is written, where the first 500 plants would cost about $80 each. And then the last 750 plants that a producer would grow would be 50% more, or $120
Sir, you have 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. It's not clear how that would pass on to the customer. In other words, are you the last person that comes in the door, are they going to pay 50% more for a gram of medical cannabis than the first person? So that doesn't seem fair. And in talking about the overall increase, we think that's going to hinder the ability of small producers to compete within the market, and clearly it's going to end up with passing on that cost to patients. So as far as that goes, we recommend that Department of Health do not increase the license fees. Consider consistent per plant fee to charge producers, resulting in fair, cost-effective production across the board regardless of the size. And I think in conclusion there, we just want to work together with Department of Health and the industry stakeholders as part of the rule revision process and correct anything that's going to end up with reducing the cost effectiveness. We want to make it more cost effective for our patients, and we want to work with you to make that come about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, I guess. My name is Nadine. I've been a patient in the program for nearly 10 years. This is my successor service dog in training. So I'm a traumatic brain injury survivor. I have PTSD, intractable nausea, chronic pain, and came to the program using 27 different pharmaceuticals, 7 of which were narcotics, all concurrently prescribed by one physician. So I have found the program very beneficial because now I only use 2 prescriptions on a regular basis. So I am in favor of the card renewal being for 3 years. It is a burden for many patients to need to renew that card every single year. I do understand that it requires a sign-off from a physician that you still have the medical condition, and the least amount of burden for that to occur would be the best way to implement that. I am very concerned, as many people are, to preserve the medical cannabis program for patients when giving careful consideration to recreational use for adults. I know that there are a variety of mechanisms in place to address that, and I hope that there's a largesse of patient participation in that process. I am a very strong believer, as many of you have heard before, in product testing. It's essential to my safety and the safety of others, that testing be done in a consistent and effective manner. I believe that there should be a methodology for compassionate access for patients who cannot afford their medicine. When I say medicine, I'm talking about medical cannabis. I think it's a fantastic alternative, but under even IRS code, currently, you cannot even deduct your use of medical cannabis as a medical expense. So we have no avenue to address using medical cannabis as a substitution for chemical pharmaceuticals that may be covered by Medicaid, Medicare Part D, or other insurance programs. I would like to see, if possible, a patient role in membership for the medical advisory board, because I think that a patient who is willing to give careful consideration to the role that the medical advisory board has, that patients are consumers of medical services as well as medical cannabis, and how we interface together is a very important consideration to be watchful of and participatory in that. This is a public meeting that does not require a quorum. So under the law, there is an exception under the OMA Open Meetings Act.
Christine, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Under the OMA or Open Meetings Act, there did not need to be a publication of the agenda for the meeting. But I would like to request that we think about that because of the reason that many people who attend these meetings have medical conditions or disabilities, or there may be family members that are caring for patients who have significant medical conditions. They may be traveling from 4 to 8 hours driving time to come to a meeting of this nature. They may only be able to be present for a couple of hours because of their conditions, and that it would be most helpful to have these agendas available, even just the structure of the meeting, like we will hear each person will make a comment on a rule, or we will hear public comment in general, and that if the meetings, say, were to run from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., that if the last public comment were made at 2, that the availability to still give comment would be available until 5, because someone might, for instance, only have their stamina available from 4 to 5 p.m. in traveling to come to a meeting of this nature, and I believe that they should have access. And I thank you very much for all of the hard work that people in this room have done, that the department has done. And then one final request: it would be so valuable to have our Secretary of Health present at least one of the meetings where patients and concerned citizens and producers are present, because I think that interface is so important, and I believe that may be a possibility with new leadership. We did not have that in the past, ever having a secretary present in the meeting. So with that, I conclude my remarks, and thank you very much.
Ben Laniger.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Ben Nuinger, and for 2 very long weeks, I've been the executive director of the Mexico Cannabis Chamber of Commerce. We're a trade organization representing producers, manufacturers, and the growing number of cannabis-adjacent businesses that are coming into the industry in New Mexico. Primarily to echo everybody else's sentiments, I want to thank DOH, particularly in the process of rulemaking, which I know there's a lot of behind-the-scenes things that happen. So thank you to DOH staff for doing this process and going through this. Overall, I think that there are several pieces in the proposed rulemaking that are very beneficial for patients. A 3-year renewal for a patient ID card, removal of the $50 replacement fee, telemedicine, removal of prohibitions, making it easier for young patients to get their medicine on school property and school buses, and more closely defining a caregiver's ability to give their medicine to their patients. So overall, there's a lot that the chamber likes and appreciates through these rule changes. There are a couple places where I think we want better clarification. We agree with what many have said, that the 8-inch definition of a seedling is problematic. First, because it's unclear where that is even measured from, if it's measured from the soil level or from the root of the plant, but overall 8 inches seems like an arbitrary number that is probably too small for what I believe the purpose to be. Regarding the destruction of plants, I think that we would want more clarification around the need to video record that destruction. If you're removing product from inventory, that seems fair enough, but if you're, for example, burying fan leaves from a grow room, producers would have to hire a full-time videographer to capture that. That's included in the definition of destruction. And then also the definition of cannabis might be problematic for manufacturers in having the unintended consequence of limiting what they're able to work for, or what they're able to work with rather. And I know that manufacturers have submitted a lot of comment on that, so I would just encourage you to listen to those comments regarding their concerns around the definition of cannabis.
Thank you.
Kelly Saco?
Morning.
Alright, so I want to start with a couple definitions.
Actually, could you say your name
Oh,
again,
yes,
please?
I can start there.
Thank you.
My name is Kylie Saka. I represent Ultra Health. I'm the COO. So the definition of qualified patient in the proposed rule is inconsistent with statute. In statute, a qualified patient means a person who has been diagnosed by a practitioner as having a debilitating medical condition. In the rules, it's defined as a New Mexico resident, so we recommend that the rules reflect what the statute reads. The second definition that is inconsistent is the definition of cannabis producers. Previously, we were titled licensed producers, and licensed producers are the only class that was given transition language in Senate Bill 406. And that transition language changed our name from licensed producers to cannabis producers, and we have the right to produce, possess, distribute, dispense, and manufacture. So we recommend that the rules reflect that same definition that is stated in statute. Along those same lines, the proposed rules created a new definition for a nonprofit producer, which is not required anywhere within statute that licensed producers or any other class of licensee is a nonprofit. So we are asking for equality across the classes of licensees. If nonprofit producer, or excuse me, cannabis producers are required to be nonprofit, then all of the other licensee classes should be nonprofit. And finally, patient possession limits are set at 230 units, which is arbitrary, capricious, and inconsistent with the definition of adequate supply. I submitted a petition in March of this year requesting a rulemaking process to increase the patient possession limits to the industry standard of 5 ounces per month. And Secretary Kunkel responded to that petition, stating that the department anticipates addressing that in this current rulemaking process after data was collected from producer and patient surveys, and unfortunately it was not included in this rulemaking process. And when patients cannot purchase what they need from a regulated source, they're forced into the black market or the gray market and are ultimately buying medicine that is unregulated, untested, and unsafe, and creating a public health crisis in our state. So we recommend and that patients are allowed to purchase what they need, 5 ounces per month at a minimum. And again, I want to reiterate that the recommended plant count by Dr. Kelly O'Donnell is 5,000 mature flowering plants, and we support that 100%. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lee Jenke?
Good morning.
My name is Lee Jenke. I'm representing Ultra Health. I'm the compliance officer. And I have a few points to touch upon. So the quarterly reports, they're, with the new proposed rules, you're requiring too much information, and most of that information can already be gleaned off of BioTrack. So if we are able to turn in BioTrack reports, everything that you guys can log into BioTrack and see what's going on in there anyway. Everything is tracked through BioTrack, so you know, that would be a better option for us and probably for you guys as well. Also, with the weights, you included weights of edibles. That's actually including other weights that are non-cannabis materials, such as like flour and whatever else goes into, you know, brownies and cookies and everything else. So I think that should be revisited. The next is the compliance violation fees. So, can everybody hear me? Sorry. These fees are exorbitant. So these fees should be capped at least 1,000, because most of these violations are very, very minor violations that can be fixed within just a few minutes, and the 50,000 going up to 50,000, unless it's a serious public health crisis, it should not be that high. Also, there is a disconnect between producers and manufacturers and the rules that we have to follow. Currently, we're having issues with labeling, so the manufacturers do not have to follow the same rules that producers have to follow, which means that we incur violations for those things, and there are inconsistencies across the board. So it would be best to have rules that apply to everybody, and everybody should incur the same penalty. The next point I'd like to address is requesting additional information from patients. I don't think you should be able to do that. If you're unlucky enough to have one of the qualifying conditions, you shouldn't be able to single people out and request additional information.
You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. For them to become a patient, that seems very arbitrary. It should be same rules across the board for all patients. The next, I'd like to address the manufacturing fees. I believe this was addressed before, but making producers bear the brunt of $180,000, and the manufacturers again are only paying a very, very minimal amount. The producers are having to bear the brunt of all these fees, and we grow the plants, we build the distribution points, we have the employee workforce. These fees are obviously going to be passed down to the patients, and so I think those fees should be readdressed, and certainly not that high. There's no reason for it. I believe that's all I have to say. Sorry.
Thank you.
Tisha Brick.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you state your full name for the record, please?
Yes, it is Tisha Brick. I come here today to address several points before you. First and foremost, I'd like you all to meet my son, Anthony Brick, who is sitting in the front row. He is a medical cannabis patient. I have been coming here for 3 years, voicing on behalf of him as a medical cannabis patient. I come here representing many on the program as of this point. I have several issues that I'd like you to take into consideration. First and foremost is that there is no true voice for all program participants in the rulemaking process. There is still criminalization being allowed in and out of school and in and out of work for medical program participants. It is unjust to allow opt-out for schools in regards to administering medical cannabis. I have been asking repeatedly for my state government to take into consideration that they made this medicine in 2009, and it is not being treated like medicine in 2019. SB 204 and SB 406 do not work equally for the whole program. It sets up participants for severe legal harm while making participants pay to be subjected to this harm. Anthony has been out of school for almost 3 years now, which is a repulsive and unacceptable fact as a legal constituent and a legal medical program participant. I came here almost 3 years ago and I asked why the Lynn and Aaron Compassionate Use Act is being used against all participants. That question still stands unanswered today. I want to know why this program isn't being fully bettered, expanded, and protected for all, considering just how many lives it has saved, and considering just how many have found a better quality of life thanks to medical cannabis. After years of exhausting administrative process and petitioning with no success, I have no further course of action except for legal action against applicable state government officials. I never wanted this course of action, and I have petitioned repeatedly to my governor from past and present, including other state departments as well. I really ask at this point that this state take into consideration that this program needs to be saved and bettered, protected, and expanded, and not run over by the recreational use of medical cannabis. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Joseph Garcia.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, all.
Morning.
My name is Joseph Garcia, Sr., and I'm here to speak on behalf of my son, Joseph Jr. Before I do that, I'd like to thank, of course, the incomparable Governor Gresham for bringing it this far. I'd also like to thank our Greenleaf, and a special thanks to Ultra Health for really helping us. We've dealt a lot with New Mexican as well. They're all wonderful, wonderful people, and I thank them all. My son, Joseph Jr., suffers from a severe seizure disorder, and I've shared video with Mr. DeHill, I believe with Andrea Sumner, and they've all been superb, really sweet people, and I really appreciate that, especially when you're going through what we go through. We've tried 21 different pharmaceuticals
Bad guy.
over the last 13 years. None have worked. He was still having some major seizures. The only thing that works is cannabis. The problem is he's only allowed to grow 4 mature plants and 12 immature. That is extremely arbitrary, and we cannot afford it anymore. My wife and I have spent darn near close to $250,000 in the past several years, and I'm trying to keep my composure because I get emotional when I speak about my son. If you would see the videos of him having seizures when he's out of his oil, it'll break your heart. It just tears you to pieces. He's a good boy. His seizures started at 19. He's 32 now. Now the problem here is he is allowed to carry a little bit more than normal. You can allow him to carry 200 pounds. The problem is we cannot afford it. So I've been literally begging the department to allow him to grow 33 mature, 33 immature. A lot of them die. A lot of the plants die. If you're not an expert, things happen, as we all know.
That's right.
And we just can't afford it anymore. I think that there should be special permission, special use form, and my wife, who's an RN, and I actually created a form. It's just a draft, but it gives the groundwork to maybe allow for special situations like ours, where my son needs more than the 4. Matter of fact, the 4 plants that he's allowed to grow only lasted in 15 days. He requires 4 grams of oil per day. When he doesn't have this oil, seizures begin, and all I can do is apologize to him for being broke. That's a major problem. And I know it's a special situation. I don't think everybody requires 4 grams of oil.
Mr. Garcia, you have 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. Although there may be some. However, I think something like this needs to be addressed immediately. Every day that goes on and we don't have his medicine is a day that we can lose him. There's been 3 times that we thought we had lost him because we were out of medicine. So when he starts having seizures, all I can do as his father is apologize for not having enough money to make sure that he has oil to stop these seizures. The medicine is wonderful, it works. So I beg of you all to please create some special rule, some special form to where people like my son that need more can get it or can grow it. That's the best solution, is to allow him to grow more. That would be perfect. And we've broken it down for Mr. Hill, and he's been gracious enough to meet with us. So the count we need is 33 mature, 33 immature, and I've shared the videos with them, with some of the growers. Again, I'd like to thank all the growers, everyone that's involved in this, this life-saving medicine, the board, Governor Grisham. Thank you all from the bottom of our heart. We finally found something that worked for him. Now we have to make sure that he has enough. Thank you.
I suffer from epilepsy too. Thank you for your words.
You're welcome.
Morning.
Good morning. My name is Gina Lucero. I'm a registered nurse. I own Aspen Nurse New Mexico, which is a patient advocacy and educational clinic run by privately registered nurses here in New Mexico who specialize in cannabinoid therapy. I'm also a contractor for charter schools, and what my concern is that I appreciate that you have allowed rules and guidelines for administration of cannabis on the schools. However, it's very poorly written. The problem that we're facing right now is the school year starts next month. We're just now implementing rules and procedures on how to go about this. The option to opt in and out for the administration of cannabis oil in the schools has become problematic. Currently, right now, as I stand here, we have 1 public school and 1 charter school that is allowing cannabis oil. Well, we have more than 2 children in the medical cannabis program. We've already established that the Board of Nursing won't allow nurses to administer the cannabis oil because it doesn't come with a prescription, with a written document that shows how to administer it, when to administer it, and adverse reactions. I've approached APS, their board of director, or their nursing director is refusing for nurses to administer it. So now the burden of proof is going back to the patients, back to the parents, to try to find a staff member that is eligible to administer the oil. Without a training program, these staff members are afraid to administer the oil because they don't have enough knowledge or education about it. The way the exemption rule for the proposed new rule on section 6.12.10.11. It gives an exemption from rule appeals procedure. It says a school district or charter school may seek an exemption from implementing the provisions of this rule if it receives written communication from the federal government that implementation would result in federal education funding being withheld or withdrawn. Every single school, whether it's public or charter, receives some kind of federal funding. But we are a medical cannabis state, so we should have some protections here. And by allowing the schools to opt out, it's not helping the children that need it. The way that this rule is written, you have literally, you can lose 90 days writing for an appeal. 90 days in a school year is a lot. This child here behind me, you heard the mother, he hasn't been in public school for 3 years. Lindsay Sledge, her daughter, she is having a hard time finding a school to allow her daughter to go back to school. And there's thousands of other children that are either using some type of hemp oil.
Mrs. Aaron, you have 2 minutes.
But the ones that need the medical cannabis, that have the seizures that can't be controlled, or other ailments that they absolutely need that little bit of THC, it's still a roadblock for them. So I'm asking that if you at least look at the rules and try to modify it so they don't have an option to opt out, because it's a huge roadblock and we're not making any progress. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is William Clark. I'm the Managing Director of Reynolds Greenleaf and Associates. I'll sing a song then. We submitted written documents that support the plant count to a degree. We feel that the plant count proposed may even be higher than is necessary. Years ago, Len Goodman told me when I was applying to be a producer, he said, we don't need more producers, we need better producers. That is still true today. The producers out there are not doing a great job in meeting their responsibility in providing medicine. If you look at the numbers, it's just math. It's just rational math. Like it or not, there is a restriction on purchase and possession that patients in the program can have. If you take the number of patients and you multiply it by the amount of cannabis they're able to possess, you come up with a finite number that the program can have, the total amount of cannabis the program can have. If producers were doing what they're supposed to do in becoming more efficient and meeting the responsibility of the license itself in providing for patients, we wouldn't have any shortage at all. In fact, we would have a surplus of cannabis. Reynolds Greenleaf supports the proposed plant count change. Is the rule change perfect? The rule change is not perfect. There are a lot of problems, and I would implore the Department of Health Medical Cannabis Program to adopt a sense of urgency in dealing with all of the issues that were brought up here today. They're all valid. I support Mr. Jacobs' contention that manufacturers and PPLs need more regulation. They need more oversight for public safety issues. These are significant and serious issues that affect the public, general public, and their safety. And at a time when the state is actually looking at legalization and talking about how important public safety is, I think it would be a good sign of a sign of good faith if the department could begin to address some of these issues. The definition of manufacturer is one of the places that we see a major problem.
Mr. Bird, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Andrea. We are concerned that PPLs are not restricted in the amount of their harvest. They're not reporting that harvest, and they are able to go to manufacturers under the proposed rule and manufacture. And for those who don't know, a PPL with 4 plants, 5 harvests a year, you're talking about the ability to grow up to 20 pounds of cannabis. I don't see, I don't see how it's possible that the department wants to be able to allow a PPL to go to a manufacturer and say, manufacture 3 pounds of DHO, which is a very highly concentrated cannabis product. These are some of the issues I think that need to be addressed. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. Is it imperative that this rule change be passed and promulgated? We feel yes, because the plant count must be put in place. We feel that if it's not, there's a very good chance that this program could be pushed back into chaos. The chaos that comes with the litigious nature of some of the producers, and that comes with the uncertainty. Allow this program to set the number for plants. Review our document that shows that it's simple, rational math as far as how many plants should be allowed. And I thank you for your time today. Thank you for everything you guys do for the program.
Thank you.
Kelly O'Donnell.
Morning.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comment on the proposed rules. My name is Kelly O'Donnell. I am a consultant with Ultra Health as well as an economist and a research professor at UNM. I've been working in New Mexico public policy for over 20 years, both in state government and more recently as an economic consultant. As someone who has researched and observed the rapid growth of the cannabis industry, both here in New Mexico and in surrounding states, I believe that the 1,750 plant count limit is, in the proposed regulations, is too low to meet future patient demand and assure that all qualified patients have access to high quality, affordable medication. The process by which the department arrived at the proposed plant count limit is somewhat inexplicable to me. The limit appears to reflect neither the results of the DOH survey nor the input received from DOH's own consultants. One fact, however, is clear. Neither the department nor its consultants took into consideration what I consider to be 2 major factors driving demand. Number 1, latent demand in the marketplace. Practice up to this point, both by the department and it would appear by other consultants as well, has been to estimate demand for cannabis in New Mexico on the basis of current purchases. That is a somewhat flawed methodology because it implies or assumes that the market as in its current state is functioning well and that everyone who wants to purchase cannabis can actually afford to purchase cannabis at the current prices. In fact, when supply is artificially constrained, as it has been through the 450 plant count limit up to very recently, and therefore product variety is also constrained, the marketplace, current purchases are not going to be an accurate barometer of demand. Secondly, the second oversight I believe that is evident in these rules, and particularly in the plant count, is very little consideration of the of SB 406, the legislation that was passed this last session that has many different impacts, if it is actually implemented, on producers and on demand. And the regulatory changes that added autism and opioid use disorder is another factor driving demand that I don't see reflected in the DOH rules. These are profound and troubling oversights. The
Ms.
department,
Saldana, you have 2 minutes.
thank you. The department's use of purchases in the market as a barometer of demand was one of the key factors that led to the judicial ruling that overturned the previous 450 plant count limit and brought us all here today. It is unfortunate to see that logic persist. What happens when people can't afford to purchase as much cannabis, or qualified patients can't afford to purchase as much cannabis as they need? Well, there's a great deal of pent-up demand that is not reflected in the current marketplace, and that demand is reflected at dispensaries in Colorado and in purchases from illicit sellers. I believe that the provisions of SB 406, the changes in the qualifying conditions, and the latent demand will all serve to accelerate the growth of demand for cannabis in New Mexico. We know it's been growing very fast over the last several years. I believe that will actually increase. And we believe, my calculations lead me to believe that a plant count limit closer to 5,000 would be sufficient to meet all patient demand, including that stimulated by the new legislation, demand for higher quality, adequate quantity, and an adequate and diverse supply of products.
Thank you.
Stephen Johnson.
And I can keep track of my own time. Thank you.